popping off, switching lanes, swiping cards. They're throwing them bags at me, cause obviously I am a star. Run up a check with me, I'll make it rain, I got the funds. That's what I do for fun.
Hey everybody, my name is Jordon Snider. Thanks for checking out From Lawnmowers to Lamborghinis. This is the on hands, in the field training episode where we're gonna walk you through exactly how to mix a perfect batch of hydroseed and show you exactly the ingredients, the tools, and the equipment that's needed to make sure your hydroseed is absolutely the best it possibly can be. So let's get started. All right, so a couple things we're gonna start with. As you can see, we got a bunch of different things here. Guys, this is what you need. This is a recipe that we've developed over the past 2 years. We know this works. When we advertise this hydroseed, we advertise it as 100% guaranteed growth. We've actually never shot a yard that was irrigated that did not grow in. It just works. So what I want to do for you is take out some of the guesswork. I want to take out all the guesswork actually. I want to show you what we've developed and what definitely 100% works. And if you follow this recipe, you're gonna have perfect results that you can advertise and maybe, hopefully grow your business and take it to the next level. So let's get started. First thing that I wanna talk about is water. This is a water meter. It's got a meter on it. You get this from your city. This is from the city of Amarillo. We paid a $1,000 deposit for this bad boy. Now, when we take this back, we get that money back. You don't have to buy this. You just put a deposit on it so that they know you're not gonna steal it. And it gives you a reason to bring it back. However, we've had it now for 2 years. We've never had a reason to take it back. So once you have this meter, you can hook up to any hydrant in the city, 100% legal. It doesn't require any permits. It doesn't require any special paperwork. You just have the meter and you can hook up to any hydrant. And how that works is, the meter, when you get it, is gonna start with a number. And you monthly, just once a month, send them an email with whatever your numbers are, and you just pay for the water that you use. I could say this though, in a busy month, we'll report the numbers, and you're probably looking at maybe 80 bucks in water, and that's using it almost every single day, filling up multiple, 1,000-gallon tanks. So water from a hydrant is very cheap. And this thing pumps out, I don't know what the exact flow rate is, but we can fill up a 1,000-gallon tank in about 7 minutes. So it's very fast, saves you a bunch of time, and you can access water anywhere in the city. So first thing you need to get is a water meter from your local city water department. When you get that, you're also gonna get this tool. What this allows you to do is hook up to the hydrants. These two little pieces here let you take off the caps. This one lets you open the actual hydrant up and close the valve. So very important tool to have to run the hydrants, and we'll go over how to do that shortly. Next thing, I want to talk about mulch. Profile is who we use. There are 2 different kinds, and these are the only kinds that I would recommend. The first kind is 100% wood. This wood, it's gonna look like this. It's just shredded wood. It's not pelletized. It's just wood, shredded up. And it's got a little bit of a dye to it, but that is what you're gonna get. It also has a tackifier that's pre-mixed into this. So it's called wood with tack. Wood is by far the highest quality mulch. It holds the water the best. It doesn't dry up and blow away like paper does. It's the best, it's the highest quality. And when you're talking, guaranteed growth and those kinds of results, you definitely want to use the better stuff. It is not much more expensive. It's negligible on the cost difference, but the quality of the product that you get at the end of the day is night and day. Second option, if you don't have access to 100% wood, the second best option is going to be the Profile blend, which is called a 70-30. What that means is it's 70% wood, this, and 30% paper. Now, as you can see, if you want to get a close-up on this, these little white specks, and you can actually even see some words, that is shredded paper that is mixed in 30% versus the wood. If you look at the wood here, it's 100% wood, which is the best. This is the second best. So you can see the paper in there. The reason I don't really like the paper, we're gonna use some today for this example, but the paper dries up. It also looks cheap. If I was gonna go look at a hydroseed job and if it was just applied and I see a bunch of paper flakes in it, newspaper pretty much, I'm gonna know that they kinda, you know, went cheap on some stuff. And typically, if a person goes cheap on their mulch, they're going cheap on their fertilizer, they're going cheap on their application rate, thin, they're going cheap on everything. So don't be the cheap guy, be the guy that provides quality results every time. That's the one that's gonna succeed. Okay, so, and I wanna say also, don't use 50-50. It's just too much paper. 70-30, so 30% paper is the highest rate that you ever wanna get with paper. And if you want, and we've done this before too, when there was a shortage of wood, just due to COVID and stuff a couple years ago, but we would use, we would split it. So we'd use, you know, in this machine, 6 to 7 bales. So for example, we'd use 4 woods and 3 blends. And so that would even dilute it even more to have that paper as little as possible in the mix. Okay, let's move on. Now, in this mix, we're using 1 bag of fescue blend seed. This fescue blend you can use in a big portion of the country. We would usually use 1.5 bags or even up to 2 bags in a 900-gallon machine that we got here today. For this example, we're just gonna use 1 bag. So the fescue is good. Everything else, if we were shooting, for example, Bermuda, we would have everything else the same, fertilizer, mulch, tackifier, all the same. We would just replace this 1 bag, 50-pound bag of fescue with a 25-pound bag of Bermuda. But other than the seed, it would be the exact same process and the exact same mix rate and the exact same order for Bermuda as well. So Bermuda, fescue, same. And you could also sub any other seed in this mix ratio, in this mix sequence, and it would work just fine. So whatever your seeds are, whatever your grass seed is, you can supplement it with this. As long as your application rate is about 6,000 square feet, we're gonna be able to cover about 5,000 square feet with this machine. So I like to go a little bit heavy on my seed so you have that nice thick yard. So never make it exact as far as your seed application rate to your actual application rate. You always wanna go a little bit more. On the fertilizer, a couple things that are important here. I want you to notice, first of all, that it's a triple 20, so 20-20-20. We can get into what that means. Essentially, it's the breakdown of what's in this fertilizer. This is a soluble fertilizer. It means it's water soluble. I can't say this enough. You do not want to use a granule fertilizer. Now, people will say that the granule fertilizer does break down slower and release the fertilizer into the soil at a more predictable rate or a slower rate, which is good for starting a new lawn. But I'm going to talk about that later. What they don't say is that it destroys your pump gears. In this pump, it has a metal gear and a rubber gear. Your pump is probably going to be similar in some way. That granule fertilizer doesn't break down in the water. It stays like grit, and it destroys your pump, which reduces your pressure and your pump life. This, however, dissolves into the water, and the reason why I like it better, and you'll see here in a minute when we do the actual mixing, we're gonna put this in the water in first. We're gonna make almost, it's gonna look like lemonade. It's gonna be a kind of a yellow water mixture. And then we're going to put this wood mulch in the mix. And what's gonna happen is when this stuff gets wet, everybody knows what happens when wood hits water, it swells, it absorbs it a little bit. So this wood is gonna absorb that fertilizer water mixture, and that's what's gonna be the slow release agent when it comes to applying the hydroseed on your prepped yard. This wood is gonna slowly release that fertilizer as needed as it gets watered. So it works like a pellet, but preserves your pump life and doesn't make you replace your pump gears every, twice a year or every year. So it works a lot better. Okay, next thing. This is probably one of the most important parts. This is called Slicky Sticky. Now, it has a very specific and special way that you add it to the mix, and we'll go over that when we're actually mixing the batch here in a few minutes. But what this does, it is a lubricant for not only your mixture, but it is also a tackifier for your actual mix. So What we're going to be doing, I'll show you how much to apply here in a minute, and you can scale this up or scale this down. But it prevents clogs in your hose. So imagine you're taking wood mixed with water, and your pump is pushing it through a rubber hose, typically a 1 or a 1.5 inch hose. If you let that sit in that hose for any amount of time, you're probably going to have a clog. And if you've never dealt with a clog, it tells me you've never hydroseeded, because clogs are so prevalent in hydroseeding that they almost make it not worth doing. But if you use a component like Slicky Sticky, and this is the best that I've found, this is a recipe that we've developed over the past 2 years, it eliminates clogs. We actually went through a whole season last year and we didn't have a single clog. Now, that was primarily due to the fact we use Slicky Sticky, but also when we're done using the machine, we go and we clean it out. We don't let that water and that mulch and that hydroseed slurry sit in the hose overnight. You never want to let it sit in the hose overnight, but this will definitely allow you to some grace whenever you're between jobs or between mixes, to where you're not going to have a clog. So most pumps will be able to blow it out and not have an issue that will cost you a whole day. Believe me, I've been there. It's not fun. We had to cut out some of the hose. It was terrible. It's just not a fun experience. So Slicky Sticky is your best friend when it comes to mixing hydroseed. So with all that said, we've got our water source, we've got our mulch, we've got our fertilizer, our seed, and our magic ingredient here to keep it all together, but also very lubricated. I'm gonna walk you through hooking up the water. We're gonna mix a batch up, get the machine prepped, and put together the perfect batch. So let's go. Let's get some water in this bad boy. What we're gonna do, and again, with one of these meters, you have full access to every fire hydrant in your city. And truth be told, we've actually used this meter a few other places. Nobody cares in the smaller towns. So, but in the bigger cities, you definitely want to stick to the city you're in and the hydrants that you use. So first thing we're going to do is pull the cap. After that's hooked up, we'll come back over here, we'll grab our hose. We will hook it up like so and run it out. After that's ran out, we'll have our hydroseeder pull up and we'll get her hooked up. I like to keep the hose away from the hydrant and have it ran out straight so that there's no kinks, because once you start putting pressure in this hose sometimes can get kinked up, so we like to have it pretty laid out. What I like to do is hold here, you'll see it, match it up, lock it in. I want to talk about this specific machine real quick. You've got 2 valves here. One valve is open, that's obviously into the main tank. The secondary valve though, if you close this one and open that up, this goes into a 200-gallon reserve tank that allows you to rinse your hose out in the field away from a water source. So what I always like to do first, after we rinse the tank out, which we'll do in a second, is fill up our reserve tank so that we have water for sure. Just do it the first thing. That way you know you have water that you'll use later in the field if you're not going to be around a water source in the next, hour after you get done spraying, so you can get that stuff out of your hose and prevent completely any clogs. So for now, we'll close it, we'll open the main, and we'll put a few hundred gallons in to do a pre-rinse. Before we start filling up and mixing a batch, I want to kind of go over this machine and kind of tell you a little bit about it. Now, whatever machine you're using, whether it's a jet agitated, which I really don't like, or if it's a gear driven or chain driven machine, those are definitely better than a jet agitated unit. But man, by far, the best machines out there are going to be hydraulic machines like this. It's got a 4-cylinder Kubota diesel that powers a pump, and that hydraulic pressure powers everything from the pump for the hydroseed to the hose reel, to the augers, it's all hydraulically driven. It's the cleanest, lowest maintenance, easiest way, and it's really strong, it's stout. So this thing has been with us through multiple seasons, through some of the hardest conditions, and has never let us down. So I want to start here at the hose reel. What we've got, you've got a locking pin here, which most are going to have a locking pin that locks up the spool. That's going to lock it up like that. We'll lock it both when we're transporting it and once the hose is pulled out so it doesn't kink. Okay, so you use that both when you're using it and when you're hauling it. This is a lever that controls the auto return. So you can imagine that this hose being strung out 100 feet is pretty heavy, which it is. And if you have two guys, you can have somebody running the hose and somebody running this. They'll pull this lever and it'll auto retract that reel in. You know, this work is already hard, so having a machine that has features like this just makes your life that much easier. And when you compound that over a day, a week, a month, it makes a huge difference in how hard or how easy your days are. Moving on in here, guys, we've got a couple of valves, and I want to show them to you. I don't want you to get overwhelmed with what this is. I know it seems like a lot, but we're going to talk about it real quick. This is something that we added. So if you notice, this is actually the pump motor that drives for the hydroseed pump. So this is pumping out the tank contents into the hose or the cannon, whichever one. We added this so that we would have control on the ground to be able to kill the pump at any moment. So this is something we added, not from the factory, but I do like the feature, so that if we're standing down here or we're up on the deck, if something happens, if there's a clog, if there's just anything that comes up and you need to be able to kill it quickly, you can just switch that lever and the pump is dead. So it's a nice little feature to have. This right here is the rinse tank that I was talking about earlier. So it's going to be a 200-gallon rinse tank, and if we do want to rinse, I'll show you the sequence. You'll open this valve up, which will allow that water to flow down into the pickup, which is past the tank. We will then kill the main tank valve, so that's a gate valve that shuts off or isolates the tank to itself. So we have water going in to the pump, and then we'll have the water going through the pump into the hose or through the cannon to do a rinse. So there's 3 valves here. This valve here controls the cannon, and you can just see big line going straight up to here. So that's cannon on, cannon off. This valve, if you want to take a look at the camera, it's this red hose. We'll look straight up here. You'll see that it goes into the tank on top. This is called a bypass. Now, the reason for the bypass is because when this pump is running, it is always generating pressure. If somebody out there in the field, for some reason, if I'm the guy that's spraying the hydroseed and I'm applying here, and I see something out here, or there's a reason why I need to stop the flow and move or adjust the hose or do whatever I need to do, I will then shut off this valve. However, if this valve is shut off, this pump is still producing pressure, okay? They usually can't kill it that quickly. What the bypass does, it allows all of the excess pressure that's being built by the pump to be put back into the tank, so that you don't generate or create a clog, and so it doesn't damage your pump. For example, if this bypass was off, if the main valve was off for the gun, and this was off, all of the pressure that pump is generating would be back pressuring into this hose, which would do 2 things. It would cause a clog of all the mulch, and it would damage my pump drive, which not only does it cost like, you know, $1,500 to $2,000 to have this pump rebuilt, which we did last year. So that's a big no-no. It costs you your time, your day. It shuts your job down. And if this is the only hydroseeder you've got, I mean, time is money. You don't want to be shut down. So just use the bypass. What we typically would do is leave it at about halfway, so at a 45-degree angle, and that would allow us to always leave it on. It's always working, and that way if anybody ever shut off the outlet, either at the cannon or out in the field as they're spraying for whatever reason, it wouldn't damage our equipment. So that's the importance of a bypass. Now, we'll come back over here. We'll look at this other line. You can see that this valve is on, which, by the way, these handles indicate the flow. handle in line with the fitting means that it's on. If it's 90 degrees to the fitting, it's off. So on, off, on, and you'll notice that this goes to this hose, which then feeds the main hose reel. So right now our hose reel is on, our bypass is halfway on, which is good, and our cannon is off, which means we're gonna have all the pressure going slightly through the bypass and primarily through the hose. And that is a brief rundown of these valves and what they do. So right now, we're going to close the reserve tank because we don't want it open. We're not flushing the tank, and we're gonna be filling this tank up in a moment. And we're gonna open the primary tank valve because we're gonna be pumping some hydro seed later. All right, guys, we're gonna organize this a little bit. All right, so first thing I want to show you, now we didn't clean this on purpose because this is what it looks like. All this here, this represents probably, I would say, a month worth of work. So this is to be expected. Hydro seeding is, you know, just the nature of it is a little messy, so it's okay. We typically do like to clean our equipment, you know, but sometimes in the busy season especially, that doesn't happen as frequently as it should. But this is the lid that accesses the tank. Now, you can go ahead and look down in there. You'll notice that's a stainless tank, which means it will never rust. And you can see the augers as well. So that auger is super important, and that's why I love these hydraulic machines, because they mix the slurry, they mix the chemicals properly. It's just so much easier to work with a machine like this and provide consistent results for your clients, which, keep in mind, that's what your entire brand is built on, is good quality results. You don't want to have a cheap machine running cheap ingredients, doing it the cheap way, and having these bad results being spit out and be known as the guy that does it halfway. Do it right and you will grow, 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 just like your yards. So the first thing we're going to do is get the water kicked on. We're going to put about 200 gallons in this tank, and then we're going to give it a rinse. So what I want to show you now is how to get the water going. All right, so I want to talk about the meter real quick. Again, this is the tool that you're going to get with the meter. This is the meter. What we used to do, if you want to come in a little bit, this is your gauge here. One rotation of this big, the red arm, is 100 gallons. We used to measure it, you know, I would say, give me 100 or give me 200, and the guy would watch this. But that, it's not necessary. You don't have to know exactly how much water is going in here. The main thing you need to know is, I mean, once you start mixing this on a regular basis, you're going to know what is right and what is not. I can tell you that we're gonna put about 200 gallons in here to rinse. That really doesn't mean anything. You'll see why later. Because all that really matters is that our mulch, our seed, and our fertilizer in those correct rates are in that tank and being mixed properly. What we're actually going after is a specific consistency in that tank, which you'll see later. The consistency is the most important part, which I talked about in an earlier video, but this is something that's definitely better demonstrated than, you know, talked about, which is why we're here. So, first thing you do, open up your valve here. I like to just open it all the way like that. And then we're gonna open this up and you'll see the water start coming out here. Just like that. So, as you can see, this hose is fully pressured. That's why I like to have it stretched out like this so that there's no kinks. Now, let's go to the deck and watch this water go in. Okay, so now we would have our guy on the ground kill the water, because again, this is just gonna be a rinse. And I'll show you what I mean here in a minute. The reason we do the rinse is not only keeps the equipment clean, but it makes sure that every batch is fresh and that we're not mixing in any old water, old fertilizer. You know, people will say, well, that doesn't really make a difference, or it does make a difference. Either way, we just like to start with a clean machine every time, a clean tank, clean pump, so we know for sure what we're applying to a customer's yard that's paying us money to do it is getting a good, fresh product every time. It costs us maybe 5 minutes in total to rinse the tank. Totally worth it. So, I'm gonna fire it up. Sometimes she's a little shy. There we go. All right, so the engine's running. I really hope you can hear me okay. So I want you to look down in this tank. It's gonna splash. So I'm gonna turn the augers on just about a quarter, maybe 25%, and that's gonna slush that water around. It's gonna clean the augers, it's gonna clean the tank, it's gonna clean everything. Now, obviously this is more than 200 gallons. We went a little bit higher than normal just to show what the process looks like, but this is cleaning out the tank. Now, if I was really doing this, I would turn it on full throttle so that water gets fully sloshed around and everything gets totally cleaned out. So we'll let it run for a second. You can kind of see what it looks like. I'll switch directions, because on this machine you can actually switch directions with of your augers. You can notice now it looks different. Okay, so now we'll have our assistant here go ahead and turn on the main pump and the gun. And what we're gonna do now, I want you to see this water. See, that water went in clean, but if you look at it now real close, you'll notice that it's got a bunch of seeds in it. It's not really clear anymore. It's dirty. So we're getting all that dirty stuff out of the tank. So here we go. This is something else that we also installed. That is a direct valve that controls the pump below. So as soon as I turn this on, we're gonna have a lot of water coming out of here. Now what I like to do, especially if you've got somebody that's new, you ask them to stand out there to make sure the water's coming out okay. You turn this on, yeah, you drench them. Now as you can see down here, the water level has dropped, so I'm gonna go ahead and mix it again to kind of get everything moving along. But you can see all the stuff that we're actually cleaning out. There we are. We're reaching the bottom of the pump. You'll notice that the water's kind of spitting and sputtering. Let's look down here in the tank. You can actually see it where the pickup is, down here at the bottom in the bottom corner. The tank is totally cleaned out, and we're ready to mix a batch of hydroseed. Now, before we put anything in the tank, I want to show you what these augers look like when they're spinning. So we'll look down here, and I'm going to turn that auger. So that's slow. So this, I'm going to show you mix speed. That is real mix speed right there. That is the speed at which the augers are spinning when the mix is mixing. I'm going to go the other way. And that's the other way. Now, I want to show you one thing. There is a mix direction and a spray direction. The mix direction allows you to get as much water in the tank without pushing it through this lid. The spray allows you, it pushes all the mulch towards the inlet for the pump. That way you can get almost all the hydro seed out of the tank when you're actually pumping it. So to start, it's easiest to do this with 2 people. You're gonna have somebody up here that's putting the ingredients in the tank and doing the mix, and you're gonna have somebody else that's out there controlling water. So that's really important. We're gonna get our ingredients back on the trailer and we'll mix it up. The magic ingredient right here, Slicky Sticky. All right, so this is where we were earlier. We had the main valve on, we had the rinse tank fill valve off. We've put some water in the tank, we've turned it, we've rinsed it. Now we're gonna fill up our rinse tank so that when we're out in the field later, away from this water source, we can still flush out our hose and clean out our pump. So open the rinse tank valve, close the main valve, and then we ask our assistant to turn on the water. So now we just let this fill up for later. Okay, we're back. The rinse tank is full. Now we'll kill the water. Once the water's off, we'll close that valve, we'll open our main valve, and now we're ready to mix perfect hydro seed.